Hello, everyone. It is me. I'm a nerd politics, and I am back. Kind of took a break for a little bit, but I'm back. The polls, everything of this election has dramatically changed by a whole lot, and it's not really. It's not a big change for the Republicans, but it's definitely a clutter mess for the Democrats, and it's actually a bigger approval for independent candidates such as RFK Jr. Exposing Kamala Harris and Joe Biden for the campaign run and why he dropped out in the first place. Um, but first, we have to come to this is a historical moment. Is that there hasn't been a presidential dropout since LBJ, and that was in 1968. Long time ago, over 50 years. So that hasn't happened for a long time. It's the first time in my lifetime it's happened. This is also the first election in over 100 years where it's two former presidents running against each other. The last time was Benjamin Harrison and Grover Cleveland. So, that was in the 1890s roughly, and that was, a long time ago, over sometime around 130 years ago, something like that. And it's also it's also been 40. It's now this one's kind of, I could break it down and simplify it that it's happened actually various times amongst presidents like Obama and Bush and such, but it's been 40, a little bit more than 40 years since there was a live televised assassination attempt on a president. So yeah, people can give me criticism and crap because there's been plenty of other attempts not televised, but I'm talking about just a televised event. There hasn't been a televised assassination attempt on a president since 1981 when Ronald Reagan was president. Kind of just that. So there's three historical values here that could all lead us into a civil war, could have led us into a civil war had someone died, but probably will lead us to some type of war come this election. I don't hope for that. It's just the way things are going as they are. I can't make any promises it won't happen, but I can hope. Obviously, Kamala Harris being the nominee, you know, the as we speculate, I don't think it's actually been announced that she is the official nominee, but chances are, with the amount of delegates she has and such, she is going to be the nominee for the Democratic sitting presidential candidate. Um, it's setting a bunch of red flags for Democrats. You have to remember that when she was trying to become a candidate to run against Trump in 2020, she didn't even come in the top three for her own state, which is down in, she was born in San Francisco of California. She didn't even come in top three for Democrats in California, which is just, it's like, looking at that, it's like, we got a Bernie Sanders in the room, because Bernie Sanders is not very favored by Democrats because he far leans to left in a socialist belief, the same way Kamala Harris far too left or far too stupid for Democrats to be like, yeah, no, this is not going to work. But because she was the vice president, people have to endorse her. People like, Hillary Clinton and soon to be probably Barack Obama come in a few weeks will probably have to look at her, endorse her, even though they're giving they're giving that fake smile. They're like, "Oh, you got it. Oh, yeah," as they bend over and hope someone just punches, just ends them, just hoping something like a lightning strike above just strikes them immediately. Because I mean, Harris is not a favorable candidate. As the stats say from 538 over here, is that her disapproval rating is at 52%. Only 38% of Americans right now approve of her being the president, which is not a winning number. And that's of today, which is July 27th. And obviously, that just because the approval rating's down, it doesn't, the electoral vote, it's something that controversial as to. But nothing has really changed that either. But Trump's rating has gone up because, of course, Joe Biden was just, sleepy Joe, of course. What numbers? I don't know what the numbers are. Um, but Harris's numbers are higher than Biden's were, but still lower than Trump is now because Trump has increased his numbers since Kamala Harris has technically been the nominee. Now, Donald Trump has picked a vice president, JD Vance, who is, if Trump wins, which he's guaranteed to at this point, he will be the second youngest vice president in history, other than John 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 Bell Breckinridge or something like that. I think it was John Bell Breckinridge, who was 36. Not as if that matters. Whoever gets the job done is what matters. Um, and JD Vance, he has said some controversial things before he was in politics, which doesn't make Trump look great. But Harris hasn't even picked a candidate for vice president. And it doesn't really matter who she picks, although Democrats are hoping she picks someone who's at least a little bit stronger, like Pete Buttigieg, or there's a couple other people that I really haven't looked into, but I've looked at Pete, and it looks like at any point, no matter who they pick for Democratic vice president, Democrats are hoping that the candidate is at least somewhat more stronger than Kamala is, because we all know Kamala's background and how she got into politics. It was through, I can't say the word because YouTube will flag the video, but it was through affairs, let's go for. And, this is someone that's not even really a politician. Their first job was being a cashier at McDonald's. That's not political effort. That's not, you go from being a cashier at McDonald's to trying to get into law and such, not being even very favorited in your own home state, and then having affairs to get to your way to the top. So, that doesn't that's not a good candidate in my mind for president. Um, versus Donald Trump, not a politician, became a politician, was a former businessman, and worked for his father. Like, he has no other background that says, "Oh, I worked in a lousy job." And I'm not saying people who work at lousy jobs can't do a great job for society, but you can't do a great job for society if you worked at a McDonald's and then had affairs to get to your way to the top. It doesn't prove that you succeeded, because that's just a cowardly way to go to the top. There's Winners have to fail to succeed. Um, you're not a winner, Kamala Harris. You're a coward. That's kind of just how I see it here. Obviously, I want to point out the safe states for Donald Trump, though, before I keep rambling on. Obviously, most of the West here is guaranteed to be safe here. I think we could say that hands down here. Um, put that out here, put it out. The South, I think the South, I'm going to get to it here in a minute, but also I'm going to put Ohio in here because JD Vance, Senator of Ohio, obviously, I think it's going to be safe to say Ohio is a safe state, as well as Alaska here, and also First District of Maine. And also, I'm going to put in Florida because the current ratings of Florida is nearly at 10% for Trump. And I think that's strong enough to say that Florida will not be voting in the Democratic partnership here. Now, Kamala Harris is only really strong in Washington and Oregon at the moment, which is not great. That's two states right here that I'm going to label at the moment, because it gets quite interesting from here. I'm also going to put down first district. So sorry, second district is Republican. First district of Maine is Democrat. 21 to 166. Obviously not looking good. I always put RFK Jr. here because he doesn't have a chance in the electoral vote, but popular vote, he is pretty similar to Ross Perot. Just, really liked by younger people, but not enough to get any electoral delegates, which, really sucks. As I'm looking at the polls here, Arizona, it says 5% for Donald Trump. If you want to know where I'm getting this, it comes from 270 to win, as well as 538. So I'd say Arizona is a strong. It's not strong Republican, but it's likely Republican here. Um, and then let me see here. Georgia is at almost 4% rating. So obviously, I'm gonna put that. Yeah, we have to kind of look at the South here as well as a little bit up towards the East, and the reason because of that is that Kamala Harris is going to be very strong for Black voters, but especially more specifically Black women voters, because of course most of Black population that contains in the United States is women. Nothing wrong with that. But that gives a huge boost for the African American community. She also has a huge, stronger boost in the LGBTQ community because of it. Not as if that really changes anything, but that kind of gives more effect on popular voters, not necessarily electoral college votes. I've wanted to make a video about electoral college and popular vote because it's not talked about as much as it should be, and I'll make a future video on it, of course. Um, let's see here. I'm just kind of going through Michigan. It says 1%, but I almost like to guarantee that it's only saying 1% for Donald Trump, only because if Kamala Harris picks the governor from Michigan, which is something like I don't even remember the name. I'm not gonna try to make myself look stupid, but I don't really think that impacts anything much because okay, you have a governor from this state, and that might change the vote slightly, but it doesn't really change Trump's votership on any of the states. They're still going to go strong, and they're not decreasing, but rather increasing. And Kamala Harris is, they're going around saying that Kamala Harris is having this, honeymoon bump, which essentially just means that, she's getting a little bit more praise in, more Democratic or somewhat more Republican states. That's kind of it down in this, that's the whole thing with it. And the thing is, Kamala Harris, I gotta say this: she is the only politician I know. She's the only politician I know who could say a paragraph, a poem, just a poem of words, smart words, intellectual words that have no meaning when they're put in a giant poem and a giant sentence. It is just a nothing burger of information. There's no calories. There's no reason to consume it. It's nothing. She could say a bunch of words picked out from a dictionary and put them together like chat GBT, and it just doesn't make anything. It's nonsense. It doesn't conform like any real reason to why any of her like campaigning or why she's the best candidate. It doesn't make any sense. It's a big nothing burger. It's nothing. Like her opinion on the Biden campaign is, well, you have to see is that we're doing a great job, like our economy's great and our system on the educational system's great. Well, that's great. Can you explain why that is? And then she just goes into, well, you could see that our kids, they're going through a process of evaluations, and these evaluations prove that their grades are going up. What the fuck? What is the evaluations? I'm sorry to swear. She says a bunch of like, oh, these evaluations, these statistics, these values. She says these what she thinks are these just so huge words that are like, oh my god, it explains everything. It doesn't. It doesn't. And I'm sorry that I'm sounding like an idiot because it's kind of late. It's 10 p.m. and I'm slightly tired. So, of course, I'm going to sound kind of all over the place. But, what do you think politics is for? You think it's all structured all neatly? No, no, not at all. Um, but she just, I don't know. She doesn't say words that just make sense. Like, I haven't heard a sentence from her. I've never heard a sentence from her come out of her mouth that's like, gotta vote for me because I'm gonna do what's right, because I'm gonna improve the educational system by 10%, and this is how. She doesn't even give a reason to why she can help. And I'm just saying educational system as one of them because the Biden's campaign and Bidenomics proven that the United States is at a new all-time low for educational the educational system amongst K to 12. Like, most people average like maybe C's and D's in their grades. Average. That's not what it was ever at. I think the average used to be about a B to a C, and a C is not perfect, but it's not like horrible. But a D is, for some people, is like, oh boy. Also, 6% here for Donald Trump, as well as North Carolina. 6% for Nevada. Let me get that in here. And North Carolina is at 4%, as I'm now looking back. Sorry. They're the more likely reason that these polls are changed is because 270 is a lot more liberal, but also because we're unsure of what's going to happen. We haven't had a physical debate yet with the two candidates, which will really prove a lot more as things go on. I'm going to put Texas here as a likely state. There's a lot of Democrats from California, Colorado, my home state, moving over to Texas. That kind of affects. Also, Hawaii is actually probably a safe state. I'd have to say, more than likely. As well as, I'm going to put out a lot of these states as actually safer states, just because it's more likely. DC for sure. So 63, 255, yeah, it's not looking great. I actually saw this is that Kamala Harris is not even leading by double digits in California. She's leading by 7%, which, by all metrics of how California works, that is a huge, alarm for Democrats. They're just like, that scene from SpongeBob where SpongeBob's brain inside, it's all melting. There's fires everywhere. His paper is getting burned down, and there's a bunch of SpongeBobs just losing their marbles. That's the entire Democratic Party right now, and it's not looking great. As well, New York has been said to be a battleground state. Not something you hear all the time, obviously. Obviously, a lot of these, like it says New Hampshire and Virginia is Democratic, but I'm almost willing to believe that's kind of BS. Just yet again, because we haven't actually seen a debate happen. We've only seen campaigns and anything. But I'd say it's like a 1% for Trump. We have to still go on the basis that we have to hear about who the vice presidential candidate is for Harris. We also have to hear on what her political structure and views are for the campaign to make it better for Bidenomics, or to make it fundamentally worse, to be fair, but how her views on African American voters are, how her beliefs are on the sides of religion, African American voters, LGBTQ, how that impacts voters, those kinds of things. Those will come in to be very strong here. I'm gonna put general Nebraska is just a safe state here, as well as the second district, more than likely to be, not more than likely, but slightly more Republican than it was in the 2020 election. And I'm gonna give Harris a possibility for New Hampshire to be Democrat, but I that's just how I feel. I think generally Maine here is still gonna be Democrat, maybe just by slighter margins. I'm gonna give New Mexico to Harris, but also by very slight margins. I still think Colorado is going to be a Democratic state. Nothing in my own home state has shown that it's going to change anytime soon. So I think it's safe to say. Also, a lot of Democrats from California moved to this state too. So, impacts in that way too. I think Illinois is still, it doesn't show, some of them it doesn't show. So I'm just going off of belief, but I'm going to say likely Illinois is, safe to say here as well. As well as New York. They say it's a battleground state. Like it was carrying at like lower than 10% for Joe Biden, but I would like to say it's pretty much the same for Kamala Harris. I'd say New Jersey was not doing good with Joe. Joe was losing by like almost 2% down in New Jersey, and I'd still say that Kamala Harris could probably keep up by 1 or 2%, but not a lot. But still a lot. But Delaware is a different question because Delaware is not Joe Biden's home state, but it's still likely to be Democratic here, I think. Safe to say. So that leaves the blue wall states, as I put in, apparently, I'm going all Joe here. Sorry, going into apostrophe like blue wall states. Yeah, right. And I'm sorry, my computer is running like Windows Vista right now. It's a nightmare. So Wisconsin is showing for pretty much 1% for Trump, but because of the Milwaukee thing, the whole rally that was done over there, I'd say it's higher than that. I'd say it's more than likely, because people are just like that. People just like that. I'd say Pennsylvania, because of the shooting, has definitely gotten more interests in Pennsylvania going for Donald Trump. And Indiana, I'd say, is pretty much a strong Republican state. I don't know why I didn't put that in there originally. I'd say some of these are not said again. I'd say Michigan is as well a likely state amongst these three. And that comes to Minnesota. And if this is just an amazing election and the three things, historical events that have already happened, there'll be a fourth event that hasn't happened in over 50 years. 52 years to be exact. 1972 was the last time Minnesota voted red with Richard Nixon and hasn't since then. But my understanding, it says Minnesota is 7% for Kamala Harris. That's on 270. But it says on 538, and I trust 538 a lot more because it's amongst all parties. It's not just generally liberal or Republican. It's amongst all the parties that there could ever be. And it says that it's at 0.5% for Donald Trump. I don't know if Minnesota is winnable. Why is my thing? Oh, there we go. I don't. Sorry, my computer is just so bad. I don't know, really. Coming to Virginia and Minnesota, Minneapolis, huge Democratic little place over there. And also, black voters are going to be very strong, obviously, down in the South here. So that might come to affect Virginia and Minnesota. But either way, even if Trump loses these two states, he still wins by 316. So it's not a landslide election here based on the current numbers and polls that I'm getting, but it's still enough to say that Kamala Harris is better than Biden, but not enough to beat Trump. Of course, the election will change that. The vice president candidate she picks will change that. And whatever her campaign reaches for will change that as well. But of course, that is all I have to say today. So, of course, if you did enjoy, please like and subscribe for more political video content. And until then, guys, I will see you all in the next political video. Peace out, guys.